In the vast emptiness of space, where stars twinkled like distant dreams, humanity's first encounter with alien life didn't go quite as anyone had expected. The massive crystalline warship of the Zexathraxian Empire loomed over Earth's orbital defense station like a predator eyeing its prey. Inside the station's diplomatic chamber, Admiral Sarah Chen fought back a smile as she watched the scene unfold before her. The alien commander, with his imposing 9-foot frame covered in iridescent scales and ceremonial battle armor, stood rigid with confusion. His translator struggled to process what he was witnessing. His intimidation tactics, which had conquered 17 different civilizations, were failing spectacularly, all because of a tiny, four-legged creature with floppy ears and a wagging tail. "I demand you show proper respect to a superior species." The commander's voice boomed through the chamber. "I am Grand Marshal Kthax, destroyer of worlds, conqueror of the 7 spiral arms. Behold as I unleash our most fearsome beast, a creature that will make your warriors tremble." With a dramatic flourish, Kthax pressed a button on his armor. A containment field materialized, and within it stood what appeared to be a cross between a saber-toothed tiger and a rhinoceros, its 6 eyes glowing with an otherworldly rage. The beast's muscles rippled beneath its armored hide as it let out a bone-chilling roar. Sarah's golden retriever puppy, Scout, who had somehow sneaked into the diplomatic meeting, merely tilted his head and let out an excited "bork." The tiny tail wagged faster, and the puppy dropped into a playful bow, completely oblivious to the supposed terror he should be feeling. The silence that followed was deafening. Kthax's 4 eyes blinked in rapid succession as he struggled to comprehend this unprecedented response. His fearsome beast, sensing Scout's playful energy, stopped mid-roar and mimicked the head tilt, creating a sight so absurd that several human diplomats had to disguise their laughter as coughs. What is this sorcery?" Kthax demanded, mandibles clicking in agitation. "Your tiny beast shows no fear. This is impossible. No species has ever." "Oh, that's just Scout," Sarah explained, unable to keep the amusement from her voice. "He's about 12 weeks old and thinks everyone in the galaxy wants to be his friend. Don't worry, he's fully vaccinated." The alien commander's composure cracked further as Scout rolled onto his back, exposing his belly in a universal gesture of trust that seemed to completely short-circuit the alien's understanding of predator-prey dynamics. The fearsome beast in the containment field had now sat down, its 6 eyes tracking Scout's every movement with what could only be described as longing. But the psychological warfare, the intimidation protocols," Thax sputtered, his translator struggling to keep up with his increasingly flustered state. As tension in the room began to dissolve, Sarah realized that humanity's greatest defense might not be their advanced weapons or diplomatic skills, but rather their ability to form bonds with any living creature, even ones designed to be weapons of war. The look of utter bewilderment on Kthax's face as Scout attempted to initiate a game of fetch with his ceremonial staff was worth more than 1,000 battleships. Just as it seemed the situation couldn't get any more surreal, Scout's attention snapped to something behind the alien commander. His ears perked up, and his tail began wagging with even more enthusiasm. Sarah followed his gaze and felt her breath catch in her throat. Through the station's massive viewport, she could see more crystalline ships appearing from hyperspace, but what caught everyone's attention was what appeared to be movement within them. Lots of movement. Whatever Scout had sensed, it was about to change everything they thought they knew about their new alien visitors. Through the crystalline walls of the newly arrived ships, shadows danced and bounced, not the menacing movements of more weapons or warriors, but something altogether different. Scout's tail was now wagging so hard his whole body wiggled, and the alien commander's fearsome beast had pressed itself against its containment field, all 6 eyes fixed on the approaching vessels. "Thax," a melodious voice echoed through the chamber's communication system. "Have you forgotten to take your medication again?" The question carried the unmistakable tone of long-suffering patience that Sarah often heard in her own mother's voice. The mighty alien commander's scales shifted from their intimidating deep purple to what Sarah could only interpret as an embarrassed pink. "High Matriarch, I was merely following protocol for first contact," and protocol? The voice interrupted, was releasing the Royal Guard's therapy companion part of this protocol. The containment field holding Kethax's fearsome beast flickered and disappeared. The creature immediately bounded toward Scout, its movements surprisingly gentle for something its size. Sarah watched in amazement as the two animals began a playful dance around each other, the alien beast carefully matching its movements to Scout's puppy energy. The diplomatic chamber, which moments ago had been thick with tension, now echoed with the sound of happy animal noises and the squeaking of Scout's favorite tennis ball that he'd somehow smuggled into the meeting. You see, the High Matriarch continued as her ship docked with the station, this is exactly why the Council insisted I bring the rest of the emotional support unit. The station's doors slid open to reveal a procession of aliens, led by a regal figure whose crystalline crown seemed to catch and reflect every light in the room. Behind her trotted dozens of creatures similar to Kethax's beast, each wearing what appeared to be therapeutic service vests. Our warriors have always been our greatest strength, the High Matriarch explained to Sarah, but also our greatest challenge. The genetic modifications that make them perfect soldiers also left them susceptible to extreme stress and anxiety. We discovered that companion animals were the only effective treatment. Sarah struggled to maintain her diplomatic composure as she watched the fearsome Grand Marshal, Kethax, slowly sink to his knees, immediately surrounded by several of the therapy animals. His rigid posture melted as they nuzzled against him, and his breathing visibly steadied. We arrived in your solar system expecting to find another civilization to conquer, the High Matriarch continued, her voice carrying a note of warmth. Instead, we found something far more valuable, a species that inherently understands something we had to learn the hard way, that true strength often lies in gentleness. The scene before them was becoming more surreal by the minute. Human diplomats and alien warriors sat together on the floor while therapy beasts and one very excited golden retriever puppy created chaos around them. Scout had somehow convinced 3 of the alien creatures to play fetch with him, their massive frames delicately maneuvering to avoid stepping on their tiny new friend. But something still nagged at Sarah's mind. As she watched Scout introducing his tennis ball to yet another therapy beast, she noticed subtle differences in their service vests. Some wore symbols she didn't recognize, and others carried small devices that occasionally pulsed with soft light. The High Matriarch caught her questioning look and seemed about to explain when multiple alarms suddenly blared through the station. On the main viewport, a new set of ships emerged from hyperspace, ships that caused both Kethax and the High Matriarch to freeze in recognition. Scout stopped mid-play, his ears perking up as he sensed the sudden shift in mood. The therapy beasts moved into protective formations around both humans and aliens alike, their playful demeanor replaced by alert watchfulness. Whatever was coming, Sarah realized, would put this newfound alliance to its first real test. The new ships approaching the station bore markings that Sarah didn't recognize, but their aggressive formation told her everything she needed to know. Raiders, Thax growled, his scales darkening to a deep crimson. They've been following our therapy beast transports across 3 solar systems, trying to steal them for the black market. The High Matriarch's crystalline crown pulsed with what appeared to be anger. These creatures were bred and trained to help our people heal. In the wrong hands, they could be corrupted, turned back into the weapons they were originally meant to be. Scout, seemingly unaware of the gravity of the situation, continued attempting to share his tennis ball with his new enormous friends. But Sarah noticed something fascinating. The therapy beasts weren't just responding to his playfulness anymore. They were systematically positioning themselves throughout the diplomatic chamber, creating a defensive pattern that seemed almost too perfect to be instinctive. The vests, Sarah said suddenly, the pieces clicking into place. They're not just service animal markers, are they? The High Matriarch's 4 eyes crinkled in what might have been a smile. Your powers of observation serve you well, Admiral Chin. Our companions are equipped with experimental quantum-linked neural enhancers. They can coordinate as a single unit while maintaining their individual therapeutic abilities. We never intended to use these capabilities for defense, but the station shuddered as the raiders initiated their first attack. Warning lights flashed as the external shields absorbed the impact. The therapy beasts moved closer to their assigned positions, their 6 eyes now glowing with the same pulsing light as their vests. Scout, instead of showing fear, seemed to feed off their focused energy, his puppy playfulness transforming into something more purposeful. "Your station's shields won't hold against their phase cannons," Kadax warned, checking readings on his armor's display. "They've adapted their weapons specifically to counter our defensive technology." Another blast rocked the station, harder this time. Sarah watched as Scout trotted over to the largest of the therapy beasts, the one that had initially been presented as a fearsome weapon. The huge creature lowered its head, and to everyone's amazement, Scout dropped his tennis ball at its feet. The moment seemed to stretch out, heavy with significance that Sarah couldn't quite grasp. "By the 7 spiral arms," the High Matriarch whispered, her crown flickering rapidly. "The neural network. It's adapting to include his patterns." The therapy beast's vests began pulsing in sync with Scout's wagging tail, creating a rhythm that seemed to ripple through the entire defensive formation. The raiders' ships had moved into position for boarding, their cutting beams beginning to slice through the station's outer hull. "Admiral Chen," the High Matriarch's voice carried an urgent note, "your species has shown us that strength can be gentle. Now we must show you that gentleness can be strong. But we need your permission and your puppy's help." Sarah looked at Scout, still holding his ground among the massive therapy beasts, his tennis ball now glowing with the same pulsing light as their vests. Whatever was about to happen would change everything, not just this battle, but the entire relationship between their species. Through the viewport, the raiders' boarding pods were launching. They had only moments to decide. Scout looked back at Sarah, tail still wagging, waiting for her signal. In that moment, she realized that sometimes the biggest decisions in history came down to trusting not in weapons or shields, but in the simple, pure heart of a puppy who just wanted to share his favorite toy. Sarah gave a quick nod, and Scout's tail wagging shifted into an almost hypnotic rhythm. The therapy beast's neural network pulsed in perfect synchronization with each wag, their 6 eyes glowing brighter with every beat. The tennis ball at Scout's feet had become a beacon, its glow intensifying until it illuminated the entire diplomatic chamber. But just as the connection seemed to stabilize, the station's emergency systems blared with a new warning. "Multiple quantum signatures detected," the AI announced. "Temporal anomaly forming in sectors 7 through 12. Cathax's scales paled to an ashen gray. Impossible. The raiders. They're using forbidden time dilation technology. They're trying to create a bubble of accelerated time around the station. They'll have hours to break in while only seconds pass for any potential reinforcements." Through the viewport, reality itself seemed to ripple as the raiders' devices warped the space-time around them. But something unexpected was happening inside the station too. Scout's tennis ball, now hovering inches above the floor, was emitting patterns that perfectly countered the temporal distortions. The therapy beasts moved in perfect formation, their neural network somehow amplifying and broadcasting the ball's energy. Of course, the High Matriarch breathed, her crown sparking with sudden understanding. The quantum-linked neural enhancers. They were based on technology we discovered in ancient ruins. We never fully understood their true potential because we were trying to use them for control rather than connection. Sarah watched in amazement as Scout began a game of keep-away with the floating tennis ball, darting between the therapy beasts. With each playful bounce, the ball left trails of quantum energy that formed protective barriers against the raiders' temporal attacks. The mighty aliens' most sophisticated defense systems were being outmaneuvered by a puppy's favorite game. But their momentary advantage was short-lived. The station rocked violently as the raiders launched a new type of assault. Through breaches in the hull, they deployed what looked like dark, writhing nets of energy. "Emotion dampeners," Thax snarled. "They're trying to suppress the therapeutic connection." The therapy beasts stumbled, their neural network flickering as waves of artificial apathy washed over them. Even Scout's tail began to droop as the dampeners worked to suppress every feeling of joy and playfulness that powered their defense. Yet in this moment of crisis, Sarah noticed something remarkable. The Raiders' technology was designed to dampen emotions, but they had overlooked something fundamental about Earth's canines. Their capacity for unconditional love wasn't just an emotion, it was a state of being. Scout, though visibly affected, kept trying to engage his new friends in play. His persistence, though weakened, caused something unexpected in the neural network. The therapy beast's vests began emitting a new frequency, one that seemed to draw strength from Scout's simple, unwavering desire to share happiness. The high matriarch's crown suddenly blazed with light. Quick, everyone think of a moment of pure joy, a memory the dampeners can't suppress. She turned to Sarah. Admiral, we need more Earth animals. Are there others on the station? Sarah's eyes widened as she remembered the station's small veterinary unit, where crew members' pets stayed during long deployments. If one puppy could do this much. But before she could respond, the Raiders launched their boarding parties. The sound of cutting torches echoed through multiple decks as they forced their way in. They were about to learn why humans called their furry companions man's best friend. But would Scout's power to spread joy be enough against an enemy determined to steal and corrupt these gentle therapy beasts? As the first Raiders breached the hull, Sarah realized they were about to find out. Sarah sprinted to the station's communication panel, punching in her emergency override code. Attention all station personnel. Release emergency protocol furry friends immediately. Throughout the station, doors to the veterinary unit hissed open, and the sound of paws on metal flooring echoed through the corridors. The Raiders burst into the diplomatic chamber, their sleek armor bristling with emotion-dampening technology. But they froze at the sight before them. Scout, still wagging his tail, leading a procession of the station's pets. Dogs of all sizes, from tiny terriers to massive shepherds, cats with their tails held high, and even a particularly grumpy-looking hamster in its travel ball, all converge on the chamber. The therapy beast's neural network exploded with new connections as Earth's pets joined their circle. Each animal contributed its own unique frequency to the quantum field, the unconditional love of dogs, the playful independence of cats, even the hamster's simple joy of running in its ball. Scout's tennis ball, still floating and pulsing with energy, began to spin, creating a vortex of pure, unfiltered animal joy. No! The Raider commander shouted, cranking their emotion dampeners to maximum power. These are meant to be weapons, not pets. We will not be defeated by. Their voice trailed off as their own childhood memory of a beloved pet surfaced, triggered by the overwhelming wave of positive energy. The therapy beasts, drawing strength from their Earth cousins, began to glow. Their service vests transformed the pure emotional energy into a protective field that spread throughout the station. The Raiders' weapons, designed to suppress and control, proved useless against something as fundamental as the bond between humans and animals. But just as victory seemed certain, the Raider commander pulled out their final weapon, a device that sent the therapy beast's neural network into chaos. The massive creatures howled in pain as their quantum links began to shatter. Scout, seeing his new friends in distress, did something completely unexpected. He dropped his tennis ball. The glowing ball rolled across the floor, coming to rest at the Raider commander's feet. The chamber fell silent except for Scout's soft whimper, not of fear, but of invitation to play. The commander stared at the ball, their hand trembling as they reached down. The high matriarch's crown suddenly pulsed with understanding. Of course, the therapy beasts were never meant to be weapons or tools. They were meant to be teachers, showing us what your species somehow always knew, that true strength comes from connection, not control. As the Raider commander held Scout's tennis ball, their emotion-dampening armor began to crack, literally breaking apart as years of suppressed feelings rushed back. One by one, the other Raiders dropped their weapons, overwhelmed by memories of pets and companions they'd lost or left behind in their pursuit of power. The therapy beasts, their neural network now stable, moved among the Raiders, offering the same comfort they'd given to countless warrior races. Scout retrieved his ball and began organizing what could only be described as an interstellar game of fetch, with therapy beasts and Earth pets showing the Raiders how to play. Thax, watching the scene unfold, turned to Sarah with all four eyes wide. "Admiral Chen, I believe we've discovered something more valuable than any weapon, a peace sustained not by fear or force, but by the simple wisdom of a puppy who believes everyone deserves a chance to play." As the station's systems returned to normal and the temporal distortions faded, Sarah noticed Scout had managed to get everyone, humans, aliens, and raiders alike, involved in his game. But then she saw something that made her pause. The tennis ball Scout was now sharing wasn't glowing anymore. Instead, it seemed to be calculating something on its surface, running numbers and equations that looked suspiciously like coordinates to somewhere very, very far away. As Sarah watched the mysterious equations scrolling across Scout's tennis ball, the High Matriarch stepped closer, her crystalline crown shimmering with recognition. "Those coordinates," she whispered, "they match the location where we first discovered the neural enhancer technology. But we never found its source." Scout wagged his tail and nudged the ball toward the center of the chamber, where it suddenly projected a holographic map of the galaxy. Specific points of light pulsed in sequence, creating a trail that led far beyond known space. The therapy beasts all turned to look at it, their 6 eyes reflecting the star map with what seemed like ancient recognition. "All this time," Kithak said, his scales shifting to a thoughtful blue, "we thought we were advancing the neural technology. But what if we were just rediscovering something that had been left behind? Something meant to bring species together rather than drive them apart." The Raider commander, still holding one of the station's cats, spoke up. "On our homeworld, there are legends of ancient beings who traveled the stars, leaving behind gifts for those who were ready to understand them. We thought the gifts would be weapons or power, but maybe," they scratched behind the cat's ears, earning a loud purr, "maybe we were looking for the wrong kind of strength." One of the younger raiders raised their hand sheepishly. "Does this mean we can have therapy beasts, too? For, rehabilitation purposes?" The High Matriarch's laughter echoed through the chamber like chiming crystals. In the days that followed, the station became a symbol of an entirely new kind of diplomatic mission. The raiders, their emotional walls broken down by the combined power of Earth pets and therapy beasts, began a rehabilitation program. The sight of former space pirates learning to play fetch and handle cleaning up after puppies became a common one throughout the station. Earth's veterinary sciences suddenly found themselves at the forefront of interstellar relations. The therapy beast's neural network, combined with the simple, unconditional love of Earth's pets, proved to be the key to healing warfare-induced trauma across multiple species. Fax himself became an advocate for what he called aggressive peacemaking through strategic cuteness deployment. As for Scout's tennis ball, its mysterious calculations continued, suggesting there was more to discover about the ancient civilization that had first developed the therapy beasts. The High Matriarch and Earth's scientists began planning a joint expedition to follow its coordinates, with Scout naturally appointed as the mission's chief moral officer. Sarah sat in her office weeks later, watching Scout teach a group of therapy beasts and reformed raiders the fine art of puppied eyes begging for treats. The sight of 9-foot-tall warriors being completely undone by a tiny dog's pleading expression would never get old. "You know," she said to the High Matriarch, who had become a regular visitor, "when I brought Scout to that first diplomatic meeting, I was actually breaking about 15 different protocols." The High Matriarch's crown sparkled with amusement. "Sometimes the best protocols are the ones written by the heart, not by rules. Your species' gift isn't just your technology or your military strength. It's your ability to love and be loved by other creatures. That's a power greater than any weapon." Outside the station's viewport, stars twinkled as ships from dozens of species arrived, each hoping to learn the secret of Earth's pet diplomacy. Scout's tennis ball sat in a special display case, still occasionally showing mysterious coordinates, waiting for the day they would follow its path to even greater adventures. But for now, in this moment, the most powerful force in the known galaxy was a simple game of fetch, played between beings who had once been enemies, brought together by a puppy who never doubted that everyone, no matter their species, just needed a friend to play with.